What's going on, GDOC? Glad to have you here. Now, starting your own game company can be an incredible undertaking. I mean, just getting the startup funds alone is probably enough to make you want to flip a table. Now, if that sounds like your struggle right now, fear not, because we have Mitu and Latoya from Glow Up Games, and they're going to share with us the 5 things that they learned starting up their company. Glow Up Games is a creative and games company building the future of interactive entertainment. They produce beautifully crafted games for growing underserved audiences upon their unique storytelling platform. They are currently working on Insecure, The Come Up, which is based on Issa Rae's HBO show Insecure. So all the attention and love in the world for Mitu and Latoya.
Hey, thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here. So yeah, we are Glow Up Games. So I'm CEO Mitty Kandeka.
And I'm CXO Latoya Peterson.
So we're going to be talking to you about the 5 things that we wish we knew before starting Glow Up Games. And yeah, just to give you a bit of context behind who we are, we thought we'd go ahead and show you a video, which is actually a commercial that we were lucky enough to record to be aired during the BET Awards this year, which was kind of an interesting experience. So here is that commercial, which tells you a little bit about us.
Black storytelling is powerful, but how many of those stories do you see in video games? The games industry is only 20% female and less than 2% Black globally.
Glow Up Games is an all Black and brown, women-led game studio. As coders, rappers, and artists, we're creating games that reflect the culture and inspire young Black and brown girls to choose STEM careers.
If she can see it, she can be it. We're making Insecure the Come Up game, and we're so excited to lead the future of Black storytelling one game at a time.
All right, so it still makes me really happy when I see that ad. I'm really lucky that we were feeling really lucky that we were able to show that. So yeah, as we've mentioned, so we are working on a licensed mobile game, which is a free-to-play game tying into HBO's hit TV show by Issa Rae, Insecure. And we want to talk a little bit about why we decided to work on that game, especially as kind of the first game that's coming out of our new company, our new studio. Because it actually wasn't our original intention to work on licensed IP, but we knew that, just getting really real, which is what we're going to do throughout this talk, we kind of knew that as a sort of Black and brown woman-led studio, we probably wouldn't get the same sort of impact and attention and prestige as we, if we were doing sort of an original game for our first title. And there's another reason as well, right, Latoya? Because, one of the things we realized is how important it is to work on this game just in general.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to us just being huge fans of the show, we love Issa Rae. We've been watching Insecure from the beginning. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to bring this to life. The other piece of it too is as a person that comes from media and film and entertainment, that was my background before I got into games. One of the things you notice is that creators of color do not see their IP adapted into games very often. You're starting to see more of this. So Children of Blood and Bone is getting a game. I think Who Fears Death is also getting a game. But in general, you would see these hugely popular shows, this massive IP, all the stuff on Shondaland, and it just wouldn't get adapted. Whereas any kind of like middle range title that was focusing on, white people or white IP would suddenly have this type of treatment. So for us, it became also another part of kind of like the mission, not just to do the things that we want to do and make our own original IP, but also to support other creators of color in seeing their brands extend into other types of worlds.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're sort of starting with all the sort of shiny, sort of, headline grabbing stuff that we've managed to do today, which we're really proud of. But, really one of the things we're going to do in this talk is, just get really real about the journey that we've had, because it has not been easy, and we'll definitely dig into that. But I do want to sort of frame a little bit around how we're going to, how our story is one of, so our mission is to kind of go big, right? So one of the reasons that we started Glow Up Games, after having spent, well over a decade in and around the game spaces and media spaces respectively, is because we wanted to prove the sort of huge commercial opportunity when it comes to making games for players of color, right? But yeah, so what we'll be
looking at is sort of the way that we are doing things in this space, which is, you know, our mission is to go big. So yeah, it's a little bit, our path is a little bit different than if you're a solo or small indie dev team, but we think a lot of the same lessons absolutely apply. So we'll be talking about, this is a very business-led talk, you know, but we're also going to be talking about what keeps us going and being honest and vulnerable. Okay, so the big first thing of the 5 things that we wish we knew when starting Glow Up Games is, number 1, absolutely, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Because here is the thing, like, it's easy to assume, and I think we did, that, okay, we got this license for this big brand, right? And then you're like, okay, we got this license, we're off to the races, but the races are actually this really, really grueling marathon in which sometimes you like absolutely slow down to a crawl. Sometimes like the track in which way you're supposed to go isn't even clear. Sometimes you're retracing your steps or even running backwards. And, you know, just I cannot underscore like how, you know, how much of the work like started once we got that license. And, you know, just to talk a little bit about the way that licenses work, like what does that really mean? What that means is, you know, generally when you're working on a licensed game, generally what that means is like you as the game studio will pay a license fee to the licensor, to like the IP holder, in order to be allowed to make a game for that property. So it's not something where, you know, they are paying you to do it. That's a very different kind of thing. So that's what we mean when we say it's like a licensed game. But yeah, it absolutely has been a really difficult journey. So we're going to, you know, just starting there. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about sort of some of the things we learned as well. So I think number 2, Latoya, you're going to talk about knowing your numbers, right?
Right, or buying time, which is really what this is. And, you know, this is my first ride in the games industry proper. I was doing criticism before that and kind of taking a very removed view. But now we're seeing that when you have to run a studio day to day, one of the biggest things that comes up is your numbers, which is really how long do you have to work on the game and how long do you have to develop it? So if we go into the next slide, we can look and get a little bit deeper about what we're trying to show. All right, so this dollar, right? Again, it's $1. Everyone's seen it. You know what this is. Doesn't seem like it represents very much money, but a really standard unit of measurement across all industries is how much of a dollar do you keep after you make your creative product? And it's really, really hard to do estimates for games, right? Like this is diabolical sometimes with the level of math. You can have very simple kind of math and what we call unit economics, where you're like, okay, it cost me $10,000 to make this game. I'm going to sell each copy at $10 each. I'll break even here. I'll make a profit here. All right. And that's like premium game accounting, things like that. We decided to do mobile free to play, and mobile free to play adds so many additional levers to kind of like what you're spending, what your UA is going to be, how much is going to happen. We're doing a license, which is also, again, normally your licensor takes like a small percentage of the back end off of your game. So you have to contribute that. You have to think about taxes. And so when you start looking at like, okay, if every dollar I make on this game, how much am I actually keeping? You start understanding your margins and you start understanding the real numbers behind what you're building and how you make it sustainable. So the first thing you need to know before I would say anything, and this is the same advice that I give to people who are up and coming in the news industry, people who are up and coming in creative fields like film and creative over TV. The biggest thing you need to know is your own personal numbers. So this book, I recommend to almost everyone. It's the money book for freelancers, part-timers, and the self-employed. It's what happens, and it's a money system for if you do not have regular paychecks. And if you're going out and doing different things. Why is that important? It is vital for you to understand your own personal numbers. How much do you need to live and cover your bills each month? How much allows you to have a profit and to be able to save money for the future? What needs to be coming in at a minimum every single month for you to be okay? For you to be able to succeed as a creative in game development or in other types of fields, you have to know your own numbers, because that buys you time to work on the projects that you care about and the things that you love. So when we were starting the studio, one of the big things that we did was figure out, okay, how long can we actually sustain this and figure these things out? Next, you go into your studio numbers. And again, if you're an indie dev, if you're just doing one small game on your own, then you normally don't have to go through this huge, huge process. When you start trying to bring other people onto the team, when you start thinking about splitting profits, when you start trying to get a license or do a bigger type of game, you need to also know your studio numbers. Now, if you have never done business before and you've never been in a business background, I would suggest starting with the Game Dev Business Handbook. And that gives you kind of the basics of hiring, firing, understanding what you need to build for a team, understanding culture, understanding how much certain things cost, and what you should be talking about. If you have done business before, if you have come from a field like I did, where you still ran budgets or you did things for film, it was just a different place. The Game Dev Business Handbook is probably a little bit too basic for what you want, but I just started reading the Publishing Challenge for Independent Video Game Developers. So that was released, I think, back in August. It's an amazing guide, and it really shows you, again, from the publisher's perspective of the table, but also different aspects of how indie studios have done this. What you need to be weighing, and the understanding behind how someone is looking at your game as an investment. Once you start seeking an investment for your game, people kind of think that, oh, you're just going to, someone is going to give you money for this brilliant idea. But what you're really doing is saying, my game is now a product, and this is how I'm going to make your money back. And so you have to know those numbers as well. To that point, embrace the spreadsheets. A lot of us are creative. I'm creative. I'm a writer. When I first started writing the Insecure game, I was just like, no, we're not doing anything in a spreadsheet. I'm going to find something else. We now use ink. But I was like, we're going to find anything that does look like a spreadsheet. But as also a person that has to run a business, you love spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are your friend. The best spreadsheet that I found, and it's totally free, is from Clever Endeavor. So you can go onto their blog. There's also a link from Gamasutra. They have a cash flow template document that you can download. This file is very intimidating in the very beginning, because it's so many different fields, so many different stuff. But I want to call your attention to this little box D down here, resulting survival projection. That is how many more months can you stand to run your studio before you run out of cash. That is the most important thing for any business, game studio or not. How much longer can you keep operations? So if you're sitting there and you're trying to calculate, okay, like, do I have time to build out these features? Can I build out and add this to my game? How much more time do I need? You need to know how long you can actually survive on the money you have. And this is a dynamic thing. So your staff will leave, people will come, you'll add more people at one part of the project, take them away. So this spreadsheet is always there for you to understand ultimately what you're spending. And then Yacht Club Games, who I believe is also a sponsor of Game Developers of Game Devs of Color. Thank you so much. But Yacht Club Games also did an amazing, amazing job breaking down their sales update for Shovel Knight. And again, Shovel Knight, now we can see this in the future and be like, well, this is hugely successful. Look at all these other games that they have. This is amazing. This is the dream. But that was not clear. And they did this wonderful blog post where they break down their sales, what happened after the Kickstarter, running out of money 5 months before they finished the game, and how stressful that was. They were really, really honest and open. And I really love them sharing this, because this is a part of the journey. But the one other piece that I want to share is this pullout that they do, which I think is a common mistake that we made and almost every other game studio does make. Mitzi, you want to go to the next one?
Yep.
The magic formula for a real game budget. So this is in the Yacht Club blog post. And again, what most of us do is a simple projection, right? We all know how to calculate staff months or man months, depending on how you want to call it, number of people, number of months. Here's our budget. But in reality, most of us who are starting out, most of us who are new studios, most of us who are doing a smaller game, we're not going to get $1 million budget. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be cobbling this together with your friends, your partners, figuring things out. And so again, their unmagic reality down here at the bottom is what actually happened, and very similar to what happened with us, where your budget is maybe a third of what you feel like you should project it to be. Everyone is working for under rate. People are working without pay. I think Mitsu and I have been without pay for a couple of years now. And just to make this dream a reality, right? And so being realistic that your budget and your projections are numbers, but they're not necessarily your cash flow and your day-to-day reality. And when you can look at your day-to-day reality and go, okay, this is how much we actually need to finish this game. This is how much we need to feel like we can finish this game and then turn a profit. Because remember, if you spent $1 million on a game and you only made 200,000 back, you're in debt. That's a rough thing to be in. If you spent, if you made that same game for $200,000 and then you made 200,000, you broke even. You make that same game for $200,000, you made 400,000, you're ahead. Margins, same in film, same in games. Margins are very important.
Yeah, I think to that point as well, right, Latoya, we should shout out sort of, the way that, recognizing, this speaks to the point you were making about sort of your personal budget and ability to sort of operate, because the reason that we've been able to do this is, because we are in positions where, we've been able to just sort of rough it and go without pay, because I'm in the privileged position where I also, am on faculty at NYU Game Center. So, I was able to do this because of that. Latoya, you came from your nice cushy corporate job.
Oh yeah, I was all in corporate. I had great. I worked for ESPN and Disney. I had a bunch of money and a black card, not to spend money on anything. So, like again, when you budget, when you want to start a business, right? I was like, okay, I need to have some money in the bank for this. I have a family, I have a young child. My husband also works, but I was kind of the main breadwinner, and I had to set aside the amount I thought we would survive. So we were like, okay, like a year feels about right. We'll totally get funding by that. Remember that, Mitzi? We were like, oh, we're gonna get funded in like 2 months, no problem. Slam dunk. We got ESA on board. This is gonna be fantastic. And now we're like, ooh, this is year 2. This is starting to look grim. Like I might have to go back to consulting. Like, we need to figure something out. But that is what's going to happen with your game. It happens to everybody. There's no shame in talking about that, right? That it's working hard, and it's just, everybody does what they can to get through it.
And I think we need to be open about those things as well, because I think it's so easy to look at I know like earlier in my career, I would look at indie devs who are just like able to go and hustle for so long. And it's like, we need to talk about the fact that some people just like are in a position where either they have like a partner that's supporting them, or like there's, people have all kinds of life situations that, you might not be privy to. So I think it's really important to be open about that.
Especially for those of us who grew up like, underprivileged. Right? I grew up underprivileged, things like that. I had to earn this over a decade of time to be able to have this type of freedom. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with you because you've been married to money. It's okay. Extra credit. So, I read tons of things trying to catch up to understanding kind of like how does gaming work separate from the ways in which television or the way in which digital budgets would work. And there were lots of things that I found useful. 2 of them are not strictly budget books, but they're things that I think you should read anyway. One is Rebel Without a Crew. So that is Robert Rodriguez's book on how he made Mariachi with $7,000. It's an amazing thing about scrappiness. I think our studio model, thanks Connor, is now scrappy as F because we're just like, let's get it done. And Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, which is a wonderful thing to read to see like how different types of studios have made this work. And again, like you can get there's stories in there that are studios that had a $32 million budget and, still couldn't make it work. The game still didn't release. It still didn't come out. So this is just a really hard thing to do.
And so I also want to talk about, our third thing that I want to point to as our thing we learned is that, we're dealing with systemic issues, right? And what that means is that affects the whole ecosystem from top to bottom. Obviously, we know that like racism, sexism, they're all systemic issues. But when you're sort of in it and trying to sort of do this work, it's wild to sort of see how deep that goes and how like those systems play out in these spaces. So to give you a sort of more in-depth sort of story of the way that we've been operating. So like I mentioned with licensed game deals, it's not that gets funded by the licensor, right? So as soon as we got the license, we were like, okay, now we need to like raise the funding to be able to make this game. And so we would, in the beginning, we were actually looking for sort of a third-party publisher. And, one of the things that we came across, and we came across this both in terms of finding a third-party publisher, which, we were like, okay, actually, if we want to do this big, we should look at sort of venture funding, angel funding, and, just basically raising equity level funding. But one of the things that's been so wild is just coming across the number of people that we pitched to who just have not heard of Insecure or Issa Rae. So, the fact that the people with the power and the money in these spaces are not the people who maybe understand the culture, right? Or have like heard of what we're trying to do. So they didn't necessarily, there's a lot of people who, we had to sort of make understand like this is a super successful show and like someone and a creator in Issa Rae who has like a lot of cultural impact. So it's really, really sort of, a point that we wanted to make there. Latoya, do you want to speak to as well one of the sort of ways that the systemic issues go deep in the sort of funding and who has the money and who doesn't, right?
Yeah, one of the big things that we hit when we were pitching for games is one, there just aren't that many people of color who have made their money here and made their money in games. So there's less folks who are becoming games publishers, there's less folks who are becoming games venture capitalists. And then even on the other side of like TV and film, most people are kind of really nervous about making a games investment because they don't understand how it works. And then on top of that, actors of color get paid way less than their white counterparts. So there's just less money to go around for the same type of work. You hear Viola Davis always saying, if I'm the Black Meryl Streep, pay me like one. And this is millions of dollars over somebody's lifetime that they can't then go back and invest, that they can't then go and support projects or do these things. So we're working with these issues that are happening across the board, and they just really tend to hit harder in games.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of, one of the things I wanted to put a related point here is that we have found a lot of amazing advocates along the way and people who absolutely want to support us. But those people are not necessarily always the same people who have that same level of financial comfort or power or whatever it is to be able to, to be able to contribute in the same ways. So it's kind of one of those things where you're like, okay, yeah, this is actually the system. Those systemic issues playing themselves out all the way sort of down. And related to that as well, right, Latoya?
Yeah, just quickly with this one. The funding structure in games, considering how old games is kind of underdeveloped. And so, coming from film, there's a lot of stuff that I kind of just expected to be here that wasn't. Data on one hand, but also kind of opportunities for development, funding, and different things. These are 3 different initiatives out of Sundance. One's a Native American TV Writers Lab. And there's lots of different things that they do for development that I don't see on the game side. There are different ways in which we would try to get funding for a film that just doesn't seem to exist in the same way or at the same level in the game space. That said, there are people doing good work. So Mitu, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I want to give some shout outs. And these are organizations we're involved with or have some connection to. So Wings Fund is one. They're doing a collaboration with Code Coven, which is the Elevate sort of incubator. Damage Labs is another one where, we're involved. So with Wings, I'm on the I'm on the board of that, and Damage Labs as well. We're going to be, Glow Up Games is going to be one of the mentors. And, there's NYU Game Center Incubator. There's also a prototype fund that Glitch in Minnesota have started. Yeah, there are folks sort of, doing a little bit of this work. But I think one of the biggest issues is that, often to go to a publisher, you need to have this amazing prototype, which is shiny and they can buy into. And so sometimes it's, it's difficult to have that if you're, if you're under-resourced.
4 is definitely sweat the details. A lot of what we're able to accomplish in game development is going to be around the detail parts. Everybody feels like it's this great creative endeavor and it's really fun. But again, finances, engineering, design, you can't look at those things in silos. You can't just be well, we're just going to focus on this right now and then neglect this other stuff. Everything will just crash the car. So you really have to plan very carefully and make sure that you have stakeholders that are representing each piece. One of the things they say in the Game Publisher's Guide that I thought was really brilliant was they're she keeps seeing team after team of people coming together, and of 5 people who want to do game development, one person always comes off to be the business person, because that has to happen. It's something that you just can't do without.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so, all of these things are so interlinked. So obviously, if you're delayed every month that a game is delayed or that you have to keep working on it, obviously that's another month of burn rate that you're spending. So, you're just having to think about all of those pieces all the time.
Right. And lawyers are very expensive. We have spent so much money on lawyers. Don't even get me started. It makes me anxious every time I look at QuickBooks. But at the same time, mistakes are much more expensive. And there's some common contract issues that, again, reasons why we wanted to have good lawyers, and even still some things with too. So any words in perpetuity, double check it. In each, double check it. Automatic refusal, double check it. And then make sure you're really clear on who has the right of approval. Is it the person you're working with, or some random person from the larger organization, their legal department? All of those things will cause huge problems down the road. Milestones and what you're supposed to hit when, and also rights to created content. Does this, does your publisher, does the person that you're working with, do they have the rights to anything that you develop when you come out of this? Do they have the rights to the next version of the series before you can pitch to someone else? All of these things will impact your overall deal. So you definitely want to get the strongest legal representation that you can afford. Or if you can't afford it, try to figure out how you can barter or figure out how you can get there, because you just do not want to go into this blind.
Yeah. And I know we've been a little bit sort of doom and gloom about some of this because, it is hard, right? So we want to sort of make the final point that, when all else is just so hard and, everything just feels like, oh, it's grinding to that halt, that I mentioned in the beginning, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We know that we can come back to this, and we know that we're doing it for the love, and because we know that we want to change the culture around these things. We want to change the industry, and our desire to do that is so all consuming that it's what keeps us going at the end. Anything to add to that, LaToya?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's 100% of what you do. It's this creative project. It's this love project. It's a product, unfortunately, so you can't give it 110% of your heart, but it does get 100. And again, like the love also from people reflecting this. We've got so much love from HBO and the crew that we've worked with there. Issa Rae and Issa Rae Productions, they've had our back from day one. Issa's now an investor in our company, which is fantastic. So like, again, like there's been this journey of understanding and like kinship and like shared movement, because ultimately we want to make the industry better for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, the last thing I want to leave you with is that we are all pioneers. And it's definitely, as game devs of color, it feels like we can't look up the chain and see too many people that look like us, right? I pulled out 3 people who are really personally important to me, right? So it's Dr. Lawson, Ms. Bouchamp, who was the CEO of Energize Games, so one of the first Black women I ever saw, like, pioneer game company, and Reggie Fils-Aimé, who, again, like from Nintendo, legend. But at the end of the day, the change that's going to come in the industry is all of us. It's everyone who's sitting here. It's all of us putting forth our talents, our energy, and our dedication and drive to changing it for the next generation in the same way that they did.
Yep, and that's it. Like those are the 5 things that we learned, and you know, the 5 things we wish we knew when we were starting Glow Up Games. So hopefully that was useful to some of you listening.
That was a super fantastic presentation. I think that you have done a phenomenal job of positioning yourself in, number one, in just like a very unique space. I mean, in an ideal world, there would be more women-owned, you know, gaming companies, more gaming companies owned by, you know, people of color. But I feel like what you've done is very inspirational, because I think there are a lot of people who will see your story, like, and they'll see the end part of it, and then they'll think that you got there by like magic. But it's like, no, this was like hard work. Like you had to, you know, think about like, all right, am I going to like, you know, is my family going to be able to eat today? You know, these are things that people don't think about. And I think you've done a really good job of just being really just candid and open, and not thinking about people as competition, but it's like, hey, you know, this is how we did it. And we're all trying to come up together, which I wish way more people would do. So thank you so very much.
Absolutely. One final thing I would say on that is that, you know, one of the, we definitely feel the pressure of being like, okay, we need to show that this works, because we need to show that this can happen, that we can do this. So, you know, we're always like, we cannot fail. It's one of the things that keeps us going. And, you know, we're lucky enough to have continued successes. Issa Rae recently came on as an investor, as LaToya said, and we're also recently now just entered the Comcast NBC Universal Lift Labs Accelerator program, which is really exciting. So yeah, and thank you for having us.
Oh, I was at one point you were like, yeah, we approached people and they didn't know who Issa Rae and Insecure was, and I'm like,
yeah, that's how we felt. Like, sir, she is on the magazine cover this week. Sir, she's on the NBA. Sir, like it was terrible. Let me tell you, like there's so much that we learned in this process. Wait for the book. Wait for the Glow Up book. There's so much that we learned.
We're always like, what's going in the book?
In the book.
Yeah, I'm sure you needed like all the patience in the world to just be like, oh, okay.
Yes, let's explain to you what this property that can pull 4 million viewers actually does. Yes, we had to really get there.
Thank you so much, Mitu and LaToya. Thank you very much. Glow Up Games, if you're watching this, you know, keep an eye on them, because they are releasing Insecure, the Come Up, and they are doing phenomenal things. So thank you so very much. I want you to share, comment, like, make sure that you make your voice heard and you keep telling diverse stories. All right, keep it locked in. As you know, we got much more.